Hello and welcome to GYDA Initiative Talks. Today we are here with David Gilroy of digital agency Conscious. Conscious are based in Bristol and specialise in digital services for legal firms. David is a self-confessed orange fanatic, loves golf and his dogs. Today Robert Craven will be talking to David candidly about his role as leader of Conscious, including how they approach client conflicts of interest, growing the business, and his personal advice for other digital agency owners.
And today I am absolutely delighted to have David Gilroy from Conscious Solutions with me. Hello, David.
Robert, good morning. It's a real pleasure. I'm looking out the window at a very damp and drizzly Bristol, which is good for the golf course that I play on, but not good for everybody walking into work. So good morning.
And it's an absolute pleasure. I think we first met at a Barclays event about probably 15 years ago. Is that right? Does that sound about right to you?
It must be that. I think it was somewhere in London. I happened to be there anyway and you were on. And then probably within a month, there was some other event at a venue in Bristol, which is now Spitfire Restaurant upstairs. And you did some weird stuff with a candle and a sword, if I remember.
The candle and the sword are absolutely still going. So for people who don't know Conscious Solutions, can you just tell us a bit about Conscious?
Sure. So I'm the managing director and I lead the business called Conscious Solutions. We're a 40-person agency who specialise in helping law firms make more money from their website.
That's pretty precise. That's pretty precise. And how did you end up with Conscious? What's the backstory to Conscious?
So I'm not as old as you, but I'm old enough to remember before broadband, even before lease lines, before dial-up, actually. So the very short, long story. Left school at 16, bit thick. Went to Rolls-Royce, discovered engineering, which was my passion, drawing, technical drawing at school. It was the only thing I was good at. Decided after 2 years that these computer things were arriving and, Rolls-Royce wasn't going to be there forever. Managed to study hard enough to get into Polytechnic, as it was in those days, trotted off to Portsmouth, did well enough in my degree to get into a management training scheme at Reuters, where I first got into information online. I remember turning up at Reuters, typing, we had a cohort of 30 management trainees, typed 30 email addresses into a DEC mainframe, 26 banks, because only 4 of us were techies and we had emails and nobody else did. And then left Reuters after 4 years to move back to Bristol and joined a small business called CompuServe, which was predates even AOL. It then got subsumed by AOL and was part of the management team that grew that business from, I was employee number 14 and we took it to over 400 in 4 years. Now we were doing that with somebody else's money. And it's always easy when you're playing with somebody else's money, but not. I'll come back to that in a second. Mid-96, CompuServe was going down the drain. Our stock options were worth negative numbers. So I'd moved to the US for 3 years. I'd been there 6 months. We moved back and set up an agency in Bristol called SIFT, which still exists today. It's 60, 70, 80-person agency. And one division of that did websites and marketing for accountants. And we're talking about 1998. Nobody else was doing it, really, for accountants, and focused on that sector for that bit of the business. Did extremely well, grew very quickly. 2000, we'd done some VC funding, raised £7.5 million. My shareholding got diluted quite significantly, partly through the fundraising, partly through a divorce. That's a story for a beer. And so I left. 2002, I left. I said, look, I'm an expensive person sitting around being bored, and you shouldn't let people do that. So 2003, though, I've done my gap year, as I call it, doing other small business things from home, and decided to set Conscious up with Andy Osborne, who was one of our tech people at SIFT. He was also in a situation where we wanted to go do something different, and as a vehicle to extract Andrew Gray, who had been my boss at CompuServe and was one of the co-founders of SIFT with me. So we set Conscious up from day one, deliberately, to help law firms make more money from their website. Well, in those days, 2003, it was build websites. We still had to explain what one was. We had to explain to some bloody lawyers what email was. So we set that business up with Andy and I. Andrew joined a year or so later, and we funded that business with our own money and, back in the day, small firms loans, and grew consistently. So we are now a 2.5 turnover business, 40 people with a small consulting business on the side as well.
So what are you selling? I mean, is it a full suite of marketing activities? Is it just digital? Is it sales on a rope? What's the offer?
So the core offering still is design and build a better website. But increasingly, what we call marketing services, so biddable media, as I'm supposed to call it now, not paid search, or who cares, tomato, SEO, social media, content provision, bespoke or generic, email marketing, although that's a world of pain for lawyers because they haven't got enough email addresses. And I say we have a small consulting business around CRM and business efficiency. But the primary is digital. Yes, we can do brand, but we're not a brand specialist. Our core suite of offering is all in the digital space. And we like Orange.
I was going to come to that. I mean, it says people can't quite see the whole thing, but it says orange is the new black and orange t-shirt.
I don't want to be sued by Netflix.
Sorry. Okay. There's a lot of orange around. What's the story with orange?
So when we set Conscious up in 2003, we started with this horrendous blue logo, and SIFT was orange. And my personal love of orange, and it is my personal love of orange, which dominates, started in 1985 when I bought an orange Volkswagen Beetle, that beautiful deep orange colour. The registration was LEU 523P. So when we set SIFT up in 96, we were orange. When we set Conscious up, we thought, let's think about lawyers, safe, secure, boring. Sorry to lawyers if you are watching this. And let's go blue. And it lasted 18 months before we just still decided we really hated blue. So we rebranded to orange. We've always kept our logo very simple. We have for the last 3 years anyway. But as soon as you pick, probably one of the top 5 things when you talk about brand is pick a colour, stick to it, and don't change. Unless there's some compelling reason like, I don't know, some geopolitical or something where it's just inappropriate, un-PC to be pink anymore or something. And everything we do is orange. I mean, I can't pick the camera up and walk you around the office, but you've seen the glasses, you've seen the mug that I'm choosing. Here's the pen, there's the wristband, and here's the t-shirt. So some of my team are having a night out tonight. It's BD stroke jolly. We're going to the Bristol Law Society Junior Lawyers Division ball, and you could only put your name in the hat to come if you were prepared to wear at least one item of orange clothing. Right?
And do you really think that makes any difference? I guess the first question is, your competition, are they as branded as you are? And then the second question is, if you hadn't had this obsession with orange, and you've got the orange dog, and you've got the orange office, and you've got the orange everything, orange trainers, orange dinner jacket,
all of that.
If you hadn't been so orange, do you think you'd have done better? Do you think you'd have done worse? I mean, do you think it's been a good thing for you?
Well, would we have done better? I fundamentally do not believe so. And let me give you one snippet of information, or a couple of examples. Where it really works is not in email marketing. The subject line isn't orange. My name doesn't say David Gilroy, Mr. Orange, or any jokes like that. For email marketing, my team, emails come from there. It doesn't make any difference in our print materials. Because we have print materials, we'll come back to things like this. Then yes, because if people see things that are orange. The single biggest difference is we do a lot of physical marketing, event marketing. We show up where lawyers show up. I don't do BNI. I don't do for business, whatever brass thing is called. We only go to rooms which have lawyers in. You walk into a room at the Grosvenor House Hotel, 500 lawyers in, wearing an orange suit, okay? And I'm going to try and find it whilst not ignoring the camera. People will stop and look at you. So I did exactly this. I'm going to find the photo and show everybody. You can tell me if I've got it positioned the right way for the camera, okay? So just tell me if you can see that. Right? I walked into Grosvenor House Hotel wearing that. 500 people, almost to a person, stopped and turned and looked. Then they came up, right? Because this idiot had walked in. But immediately I could see this guy bearing down on me. He's weaving through the crowd. He comes up, he shoves his hand out and goes, "You must be David Gilroy." Now, it's not just me, because bearing in mind, I'm trying to build a business that wants me but doesn't need me. Any of my team can go to an event anywhere in the country in an orange shirt, blouse, skirt, trousers, whatever. If there's 40 people in the room, at least one of them will be a customer, right? So it's worth going. And somebody will come up and say, oh, you must work for Conscious Solutions. The colour in it, and we're in a niche, you know, and I touched on why the niche is fundamental. I think it's easier to build a brand in a niche than just by saying we do everything for everybody, right? And we still do get inquiries. We have a decent brand in Bristol. We do get occasional referrals from customers saying, would you work with my friend? They've got an X business, you know, garage business was the most recent one. I'm like, no, we don't. We'll give them a bit of advice and we'll tell them where to look, but we're not going to do that work.
No, so I'm an absolute fan of niche. In fact, I'm an absolute fan of niche within a niche, as long as there's actually a marketplace there. So there's no point having an obsessive niche with, I don't know, babysitting 14 to 16-year-old autistic children, because there's just not enough. There's not enough business there.
So let me give you our niche within the niche. There are 10,000 law firms in the UK.
Yeah.
Broadly speaking, the top 100, 200, 500, and then there's this rest. But if you go to the other end, there's 5,000 sole practitioners, one woman or man bands, maybe with a couple of staff. And then in the middle, there's 5,000 up to 4,900. That's our sweet spot. And within that, we can chunk it up. So we basically have 4 categories within that. And we do different marketing, different targeting for those different audiences based on size and potential spend. Now, I'm ignoring the 5,000 at the moment. If they find us and they understand what we do and they want to fund it correctly, that we can make a profit, then great, we'll talk to them, but we don't go looking for them. Whereas it's 4,900 in the middle, and we do look at the top 100, but we don't really chase the top 50. So we have clients just inside top 100, work with them quite happily. Once you get to top 50 or 60, they don't look at our specialism as adding real value. I'll give you an example. I met the marketing director of a 500 million turnover law firm. They loved what we described and all the rest of it. We went to meet them in the room, and the US marketing director said, well, David, what you say sounds great, but our policy is we can only work with businesses who are global, who can support us in our 3 continental regions. I said, yeah, I know that. I'm not expecting to work with you. It's an interesting conversation. So I'm rehearsing the conversation when I get to the business that's only turning over 200 million. He was like, oh, I get that, that's great. And you never know, one day we might be global. So knowing your niche and focusing on a niche, and it might be we only work with businesses within 50 miles of Bristol. You know, we spend 60 or 70,000 pounds a year on travel. We wouldn't do that if we were within, our niche was 50 miles of Bristol. So, you know, you cut your cloth accordingly. But the key thing with lawyers is, you know, we're not expensive as an agency, generally. We're £100 an hour blended rate. But we look cheap compared to what lawyers charge, but we look expensive compared to some agencies. So we've just picked up a project where the other agency were charging a £60 an hour blended rate. And we still won the project because of our niche, because of our expertise in the sector. Things like, I can tell a law firm that the average marketing spend as a percentage of turnover is 2.1% because I've got 40 or 50 data points.
Yeah. Right? So I love that. And I totally get, and I'm totally with you on the idea that in a niche you can become a big fish in a small pond. In a niche you can know more about the customer than the customer knows. In a niche you can talk the language. In the niche it's rinse and repeat because you're doing a similar thing but in a different geography or for a different piece. But is it for you, is it all upside? I mean, is there not a downside to the niche?
There is. There's a downside and a flat side. So what I mean by that is, if you're a single sector business, you have to work out what your headroom is and how big can you grow in that sector. So give an example. So you live on the outskirts of Bath. If we work with an A-grade client in Bath, we can't work with a different one. Okay? So we have an A-grade client in Norfolk, East Anglia, called Ashton's Legal. They're a terrific law firm. It took us over 3 years to land them with lots of different touch points and everything. And they made it very clear when we worked with them, they gave us a list that said, do you work with any of these people? Yeah, we work with that one and that one. Okay, that's okay. And we don't do exclusive, right? We never have, we never will. Sorry, with one exception, but I won't bore you with that. But they said, look, we'd rather you didn't work with these people. Okay? I've got another example, clients in Essex. We already work with a firm called Burkitt Long and a firm called Jeff and Sons. Doesn't matter who they are, but that's basically us done for Essex. I met another firm called Ellison's at a conference. They'd heard of us. They didn't know we worked with the other two. We got on really well, and we said, oh, by the way, just before we go too far, before we hit first or second base, you need to know we work with so-and-so and so-and-so. And the conversation stopped there, which means I don't have to waste my time chasing people who know won't work with us.
And I know it may be a schoolboy question, but we've had a situation like that here where we're working with two similar competitive agencies, and okay, we're doing different work from the work you're doing. So we're doing kind of, it's not out into the public marketplace, it's within those businesses, but we've got NDAs set up on both sides, and we have a Chinese wall, so we have different consultants working with the different agencies. So in a way, now the two meet. Now, in that instance, our clients were happy that there was a big enough gap, and they know that our brand and our integrity and our ability to keep our mouth shut is absolutely everything. With that, I'm just curious as to why that doesn't happen for you. Is that because you can't have two advertising campaigns in effect, banging up against each other? What's the logic about that?
No, we can. So when needed, we have a minimum NDA clause in all our standard contracts. We're a 40-person agency. I've got a team of 4 account managers. If we have two clients, same geography, where they really do think they compete. But what happens to law firms is if they've got an office in Bristol and Bath, somebody else has an office in Swindon and Bath. Okay, and you think, oh, the Bath is the smallest one. It's an overflow office or something. So it's working out that geography, and we can get all the data and we can map it if we really had to. So what we'll say to clients, if they say we meet a new client and they say, who do you work with? And that's generally the question. Now you could say, we work with X and Y in Manchester, but that's not the question they're really asking. What they're really asking is, who do you work with that we know, who are local? So you answer the question they should have asked, not ignore it. And then you say, we work with so-and-so. They go, oh, we don't worry about them. Oh, they're more expensive than us. So they do high net worth and we don't. Or they do more commercial work and we do consumer work. And they will self-select whether they think they compete. And at some point you have to put your big girls, boys pants on and just walk away and go, okay, there's too much competition. And then we say, whether it's search engine optimization or biddable media, it's all about spend. There is no secret sauce to how you do SEO. Whatever anybody says, if anybody's watching this and you go out telling your customers, you have a special way of doing it, you and I both know you're selling snake oil, right? It's about good content. It's about, but let's not get into that. There is no secret sauce. So you say to people, you're spending £20,000 a month or 5, and our other client isn't spending that, or vice versa. Now, we don't obviously share those numbers in detail, but when people go, well, I keep seeing their advert before mine, you go, yeah, but you're spending £500 a month. Your budget runs out. And you leave it unsaid that maybe they're spending more than that and their budget doesn't run out. So we get around it that way.
Okay, and there's an interest.
One more thing on the downside of a niche. If the niche struggles as an industry, you struggle. So 2008 recession, we were 5 years into the business. I can't remember what we were turning over, probably 1.4, 1.6. And we had 2 years in a row in 2010 and 11 where we only grew our top line at 3% and didn't grow our bottom line at all. The reason was the legal sector is generally slightly lagged recession. Okay, so we had 2 years of flat growth. Now, if people are listening to this thinking 3% is growth, it really isn't. It barely covers inflation on your wage bill. Okay, growth for me is 10 to 15% compound year on year, and that's what we've done probably more often than not.
So I've worked with agencies. I run a couple of mastermind groups, and people come to the agencies and they're going, we're going to go for a niche. Well, where should we go? And they rock up and they have this list, and they're looking at you and going, oh, and they're looking at people who specialize in medical, and they're looking at people who specialize in accountants. I mean, in some senses, the law of economics 101 says supply and demand is that if being in a niche and being in your specific niche is that good, that other suppliers are going to come into the market and reduce the power of the niche. Is that what's happened, or is law just so unattractive because people don't want to spend their whole time with lawyers? I hope lawyers aren't listening. But is it just people would rather be, if I'm going to do a niche, I'd rather do football clubs or rock bands or music venues or guitars than lawyers? What's stopping people entering the niche?
Nothing. So the accountancy sector, if I go back 15 years and beyond, it commoditized quite quickly. Prices got depressed, lots of people came into the market. We have direct competitors, forgive me for not naming them, I don't like giving them too much credibility. They're terrific in general. We've only got two that we consider direct competitors because they really truly only do law, or law firms, and they truly compete in our space. We have competitors who do bigger and up, and we have competitors who do a bit of legal but other professional services. And if you do your marketing and your sales correctly, I reckon 8 out of 10 times we don't end up in a pitched situation. Okay, now I don't know if that's unusual for us, but then also we're not looking for, I say, very big contracts. A typical web dev project for us is somewhere between £8,000 and £30,000. They're not £100,000 projects. Okay, and we know how to do the operations efficiently. It's less profitable work than doing biddable media, because you think it's a 100-hour project and it's not finished. You have to finish it. Now, the skill is in making sure clients understand what you charge for. When you're doing 100 hours biddable media project, you stop at 100 hours. Dead easy, kind of thing. So the competitive threat is always there, but also if you keep your prices high and somebody comes in and drops their trousers, the market doesn't naturally drop down to the price. Okay, and you just try and elevate yourself and unashamedly expensive, or whatever the stellar arts are. So
we have this sense of niche within a niche. So that's the first thing, which I think is really interesting. And also it is actually marketing 101 in terms of mapping out the territory and where the other players are and where the customers are, and discovering that there is actually a sweet spot that you can actually category of one piece. It's this thing about actually being able to own a piece of the territory. And that kind of goes back to your brand and your orange, which kind of, and you use that word secret sauce before. And I was wondering about Conscious, whether one of the things that makes Conscious different from most digital agencies is that you're not someone with a pointed head. I'll put it that way. So you're not a tech. You're a salesman, really. You're a salesperson who runs an agency rather than a dev who's found themselves running an agency. That presumably that makes you quite different from other agencies.
Well, you're mixing the word you and conscious. So some of what you just read talks about me. Yeah. And I'll repeat what I said a few minutes ago. I'm trying to build a business that wants me but doesn't need me. Okay. So I've just had 3 days out of the office working on my business on a Goldman Sachs program, and the business carries on. I can take a week off with no phone calls and no emails, and I come back and the business is still there. And that's absolutely crucial as you build a business to a certain level. Because one of the single biggest risks when you get to exit valuations is if the founder is too involved in the operations of the business, the price goes down massively. Right? So I think that's number one. The second one is, and when I first set Conscious up, I did 2 things. Bear in mind, it was my second startup, and my third business where I'd run teams of people, leadership and culture and those kinds of things. Although working for an American company, they told you what culture was. They didn't help you with it. Which was fascinating. When we set Conscious up, we made it a very deliberate decision to make it not nerdy, very client friendly. And I read the E-Myth book, and people make that classic mistake. They come out as a technician for doing something and then don't know how to run a business. And again, teaching people to suck eggs, I know that. So yeah, my background is sales and marketing, customer facing through and through, and leadership and culture. And I've done that in all 3 businesses. At 27 years old, I joined CompuServe, and by 30, I was running a call center of 250 people. You learn to manage very well. I was a manager there, I wasn't a leader because it wasn't my business. And those two things are very different. That's a whole other podcast. So with that, I think the secret sauce, is there one about running a business? I think it's about being absolutely crystal clear about what you do. Right? So I'll give you an example recently. There is a small network of law firms in the UK. And they approached us to say, look, we want to do this project around data analytics, to do with insurance and risk, and we'd like to talk to you about it. So I went and had a conversation with them. And they were saying, oh, well, you know this sector so well, and you've got a software business. I went, no, we don't. No, we have a web agency. Well, you've got this software, could you do it? And we had a couple of conversations, and in the end, I finally chipped in and said, look, this isn't for us. We can't do this project for you. It'd be easy to say yes. You might well give it to us because you know us and we know the sector, but it'd be the wrong thing for you if we took on this project. However, what we'll do is I will personally consult with you when you get all the proposals to go through and tell you what I think. And I go, oh, that'd be fantastic. Would you mind? And it is about sticking to what you know and don't chasing stuff that you're just never going to get. Give you another example. 4 or 5 years ago, my sales guy was probably in his second year with me, Rich. And we got this inbound phone call from the biggest law firm that we would ever have worked with. I mean, at the magnitude of 10 bigger than our next customer. This is a few years ago. And I was sitting next to him when he took the call, and I could see his face was just, he's like, this is paying for my summer holiday, this commission. And they did the inbound call and set up the next call. And he put the phone down, he turned around, he was just like, David, just give it 116 partner law firm. I'm like, Rich, phone them back, tell them we work with A, B, C, D, E, who are all much smaller firms, but spread across their geography. He went, no, I'll say that. No, you tell them right now before they waste any time. He phoned them back. He said, just to let you know, one thing we didn't talk about because you were in a bit of a rush. We work with A, B, C, D, E. Anyway, I heard him go, okay, right, yeah, no problem, I'll wait. Put the phone down. And he turned around, and I said, what's the deal? He said, they're going to check with their boss and call me back. They never call back. We got an email a few days later going, really sorry, can't work with you. Right? Because they made that decision for us. Now, we could have told them that right at the end of the sales process, but you get that out of the way really early. So going back to secret sauce, be absolutely crystal clear about what you do and just do that. Whatever that is, just do that.
But you need such big balls to say, we normally go down route A, and there's something in route B, we could probably do it. I mean, I know the biggest client from
Robert, squirrel!
I mean,
people haven't seen the Tom Fishburne cartoon.
Yeah. But you see it. So two things from what you said. So I've been working with a board of they're actually a 50-person agency, and the one thing is that the two big struggles are, as you identified spot on, is hey, we need to get out of the business. We need to not be involved in anything, or because we're holding up the growth of the business. Good, well done. But can't do that because people might make mistakes. And it's like, well, I mean, it's kind of like the Dennis Yu podcast, which people can see before, where Dennis actually has a system and a process in case his business partner walks out. He's got a process for everything. If he goes to a speaking gig, he always has a number 2 with him, with the deck, with the materials, so that someone else can deliver the work. There's a process and a system for how you answer the phone all the way through to how you close the deal. So the first thing that these guys were saying was, what happens if it's not about us? And the other thing was about, oh, by the way, as you said, squirrels. There's some really fascinating stuff that we've never done before, but it looks like there's good margins, and you can see they're shooting themselves in the foot by their own inability to have the big balls. And I mean, it must be.
Sometimes an opportunity presents itself that you have already thought about. You may have put some thought into how you would deliver it, but you've never gone looking for it. Right? So as a friend of mine, he always says, when somebody offers you work, you say yes to it, then you work out how. Now, I slightly disagree with him, because if it's you're here and the work's over there, then the answer is no.
Yeah.
Okay. But if it's, and that depends on how good you are at planning your product set. So if I go back 7 years, we didn't do SEO and PPC, and now it's over £1 million a year because our customers kept asking for it. And we used to refer work out. And one of the things I wish I'd done 5 years ago was say yes to the customer who said, I've got £3,000 a month to spend on SEO. Can you do it? And I went, no, we can't. We don't have anybody. I should have said yes.
This is back to good old fashioned ants off. I mean, from marketing 101, the only thing I learned from doing my MBA, which is you've got existing and new customers, you've got existing and you've got new product. The beauty of a niche, whether your niche is product or service, is that you're going deep in. And the problem for agencies we are an agency, is that anything that comes in through the door, whether it's a sports shop on the corner or whether it's the local BMW dealership, whether it's we want a new website or we want an email campaign or we want stickers put on bumpers of cars, they think, yeah, we can do that. And they end up having to learn how to do everything and doing everything in an incredibly mediocre way. So everything comes back to niching on product and service and marketplace, but just moving slowly rather than making that huge leap to new product, new customer.
So I'll give you another example. Over 10 years ago, clients said, "Oh, David, we love the website. Can you do it as an intranet?" We went, "Yeah." And I spent a rainy Sunday afternoon researching out-of-the-box intranet software, found one intranet dashboard, downloaded it onto my Windows PC, ran the exe, installed it, built a demo, showed it to them. They said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great, we'll have it." So a month later, we were building intranets. And we had to hire a guy to do it. And then we stopped selling them because the software was too complicated and we didn't really market it very well. Then we had to fire the guy. Not great, because squirrel, somebody, and you've got to be absolutely crystal clear with that. If unless it's something you can do well and are prepared to invest and then grow, because you've already.
Okay, so let's just give another squirrel. Maybe it's not a squirrel, but that's an internal one, which is at the moment, everyone is talking about mental health. It is the. One could argue, and I'm not meaning to be disrespectful to anyone here at all, you could argue that it's just the flavour of the month and that it's trendy and so I'd be really interested for you to just explain your approach to mental health, because you've got a fair few people there, so presumably some people are suffering either under work stress or from family stress or home stress, and I'd be really interested in how you've handled that at Conscious.
Okay, so we're quite paternalistic as a business. We've supported team members through breast cancer. We've supported my former business partner through prostate cancer. We've supported people through mental health problems. So a year ago, there was a conversation in the management team about, we felt we've got a really tight, positive team, but we'd never done any consistent surveying of people. Yeah, we do one-on-ones, and people are very open. We take feedback really well most of the time. So we did an anonymous survey. We did it old school. We taped up a box, we cut a hole in the top. People could write notes out, type them out, put them in the box. Left it open for a week. At the end of the week, a couple of my team, went and got all the results. They grouped them all into categories. So, could we have more flowers or plants in the office? Ones that pissed me off, like, we need more single people. We had 36 people. Somebody's going to take the piss. They just are. And we had a couple that called the culture toxic. We had somebody who thought we had a blame culture. And I'm pretty sure in 15 years, I've never said to anybody in this business, that's your fault. Almost the opposite. But it shook me a little bit. And when my team had grouped all these, Dan Hodges, who's one of my management team, came to get me and said, right, we're ready to give you some feedback. So I went and sat down, they put a couple of slides together, and then it showed me the good stuff and some of the not so bad stuff. And then 3 others left the room, And Dan went and stood by the meeting room door and then showed me the bad stuff. And I sat there and I went home, and it was the most disappointing day in the 14 years that I've been running the business. And I went home and I showed some of the stuff to my wife, and we had a long conversation about that. It's the first chance people have had to sound off. So what we did, and one of the bits of feedback that really struck me, forget the toxic culture, because I don't know where that came from, was we were very good at helping people in a crisis. Okay, whether it's death of a parent, spouse being ill, or employees being ill. What wasn't specifically mentioned, what we concluded from that was actually we're not good enough at doing little and often, not consistently, not openly. So if people have a major challenge in life, we're good at dealing with them, but we're not good at necessarily doing it consistently. So we immediately put a well-being team in place. It's got 4 people nominated to be in the team. I then picked who I wanted in it, a balance of gender, a balance of age, a balance of length of service, and they meet on a monthly basis. And they have now become this interface between me as the owner of the business, and we'll come back to ownership shortly, I'm sure, and everybody else. So they are the team responsible for how much fruit we order. They're the team responsible for our planning for Mental Health Awareness Week, as we did a couple of weeks ago, where they put in a mindful knitting session, we had a lunchtime walk, and all those kinds of things. It's not a function of me as the owner of the business or the generic management team. It's a specific responsibility.
But what about, so I get the knitting team and the type of fruit you have.
We've got a different mug now.
Oh, well done. Okay, fine. So if someone's in difficulty or someone's struggling, you're saying they go to the group, and the group is unofficial. It's like an NDA, for want of a better phrase. So
so it's an official team. They're called the Wellbeing Team. I've been noticing it. They have 3 roles. In fact, I just reminded everybody recently, because as with anything, and this is documented, by the way, is you can go and speak to them completely anonymously. Pick who you want to go and speak to, that you think you get on with, and they will not say a word to anybody. You can speak to them and tell them to put it on the record, but not from you. So almost Chatham House. Or you can speak to them and say, I want David to know he's a bastard and he needs to sort it out. Okay? Or somebody else in the business. So they have those 3 roles, if you like, as well as just the general health of the business. Now, but let's be absolutely clear, it's about the health of the business. It's not about fun stuff. We have a fun team who do that. It's a different role. And it's about just making sure the business is treating people respectfully and all those kinds of things. Some of which we were doing, but we never formalised it, if that makes sense.
So sorry, I'm just going to go back to it again. So if someone is struggling, they go to someone in the group who they feel comfortable with, and they explain to the person that they're struggling because something's happened in their private life, and they're not on top form. And in the first instance, that person can say, take Friday afternoon off, it's okay, or at what point does it, and presumably there's some kind of process that says, now, because you are unable to work effectively because of your mental health distraction issue, we now need to make this official and it needs to be registered. Is that kind of the system? Broadly
how it works. So if they're, I don't like the word line manager, it's shit. If their boss has noticed a performance issue, then it will be commented on, okay? And because they might notice. But if the individual starts to underperform, but it isn't noticed because they're not underperforming that badly, but they feel like there's something they need to talk about, then they can elect to go and do that. But if it's we've noticed before they have, like, they're not just turning up, quote unquote, late once a week, but they're doing it 4 times a week. What's going on there? Okay. So it's and that's done really well. So this year we redid the anonymous survey, but we brought in a numbers aspect as well. So we still have the qualitative things, and I've been through those, and they're all infinitely better. Right? So we've gone from, if this was the real crap and this was the good stuff, everything's come up. There's still some stuff where I read it and go, I I know exactly who wrote that. And also, what we have to remember in organisations is not everybody knows what's going on. So one person makes a comment which is obviously about somebody else, but they don't know the challenge they're going through in their life, and you can't tell them. It's none of their business. What we have said to the team is, if you are comfortable, share that information so everybody understands. And that takes also metaphorical balls to do that. But as I say, this year we brought in a numbers scale as well, and we're looking now at whether we do something quarterly, and it was basically, what's the office environment like? Do you feel supported at work? Do you feel supported in your personal issues? 4 or 5 questions. Didn't take anybody very long to fill out.
Brilliant, love it. Just want to squeeze in a couple more questions. The one, I mean, the in some senses, the piece around exit, around sale, around valuation is always hot. Just yesterday I was with an agency and they're trying to figure out what their valuation is, and then one of them is going, oh, so how much am I worth? And then they're going, could we continue the agency without him? And he's going, oh, could I get the money out? Now I know you've been through that. Could you just clearly the correct side of an NDA, could you just share with us what you can about your experience of valuation and buying someone out, essentially, I guess is what you call it.
Yeah, so it's I won't go back to the SIF story of VC money. That was a different world, a different era, and would I go for the VC route ever again? I don't know. You'd have to drag me kicking and screaming a little bit. So the business was founded 15 years ago by myself, Andy Osborne, Andrew Gray. This is all public record to some degree. So we owned 85% of the business. 2 employees owned 5 each, and a friend and family member owned the other 5. We had A and B shares, so Andrew and I controlled the voting shares. And the business grew and flourished. We worked together for the 12 years before that. We knew each other inside out. We're completely different characters. And Andrew's one of my closest friends. And in 2017, I recognised that his enthusiasm for growth in the business wasn't the same as mine. And it got to the middle of 2018, and Andrew started to recognise it, and he came to me and said, can we have a conversation? So we concluded that in January of this year. And one of the smartest moves that was made, and it was Andrew's suggestion, was to have somebody else negotiate with me, because it's much easier to tell an intermediary to piss off than it is to tell one of your closest friends.
So that's an independent that you both trusted, is it? Or
yeah, it was somebody that was negotiating for him, because I was quite happy to do my own negotiating.
Okay.
Now, fundamentally, and this is what people forget, I think, when they're thinking about exit, and everybody says start with the end in mind, know your exit strategy. Absolutely right. You absolutely have to do that. In our case, is it a bigger agency? Is it somebody else in the legal sector who doesn't do the services that we do? Is it a strategic play from somebody outside the UK? I'll just stop at those 3 options. All of those are possible. So you need to know how you shape yourself for each of those to be worth it. But at the end of the day, a business is only worth what somebody else is prepared to pay. It doesn't matter whether you think you're worth 15x EBITDA because you get 90% of your turnover on contracts, recurring incomes, or it doesn't matter. If somebody else doesn't value that the way you do, they won't pay the money. So we actually got to evaluation, me and this independent, in 60 minutes. It took no time at all. It took 5 months to conclude the deal. And there was some nibbling around the edges and those kinds of things. But it wasn't difficult because there was an amount of money I was prepared to pay.
So it's kind of like, so you're saying it was kind of like a Venn diagram, that there was a meeting point where...
Yeah, so in classic negotiating terminology, there needs to be a negotiating continuum. And in the diagrams, they draw it like this. The highest price I'm prepared to pay must be above the lowest price you're prepared to take. If we're here, there's no deal. There's never a deal to make. And the struggle that we all have is we don't know what everybody else's multiple is, because generally, we're at 2.5, going, up to 3, hopefully, if we have a really good year. Agency. Those deals are never public. You won't find on the public record that somebody paid 5 times EBITDA, 8 times EBITDA.
And the frustration I have is I spoke to you at the time, and I speak to lots of agency owners who are thinking, considering, or going through some kind of valuation and sale. And one, as you absolutely nailed beautifully, irrelevant of what you think the valuation is of your business or your part of the business, if someone doesn't want to pay that, they don't want to pay that. So I think that's the first thing. I think the other thing is the industry, the mergers acquisitions industry wants you to sell. So they really tell you how much money you're going to get, and then they rape you with valuations and reports once they've got hold of you. So it's in their interest, it's in the interest of the accountants, in the interest of the consultant to tell people their business is worth more than they can to make it happen. And the final thing that drives me mad is bloody EBITDA, or net profit before tax, net profit after tax. And the valuation multiple, again, I was talking about this last week. I talk with an agency and they go, look at our EBITDA, it's our EBITDA awesome. And you go, okay, that's fine. So just there's 4 of them, 4 directors. This is really great. Tell me about what you take out of the business. And they go, we take out 800K, 200K each out of the business. I think good. So where does that come? That comes above this EBITDA. No. It's all in dividends at the bottom. So therefore, your 900,000 EBITDA you've been using a 10 times multiple of, giving yourself a valuation of 9 billion, is bollocks, because actually your EBITDA is nearer 100,000, and actually the multiplier is probably nearer 5, because that's what's going on. So actually your business isn't worth 9 million. It's worth, if you're lucky, by that valuation, 5. So there's so much.
Well, people just fundamentally don't understand. They just don't understand. And and also we have always in our business filed full accounts. So if anybody watching wants to go and see the detail of our accounts, go to Company's House, search on Conscious Solutions Limited. I think 049669 company number. And you'll see everything. You'll see everything for 15 years. Full detailed accounts, full P&L, full everything. Because if somebody wants to phone me up to have a conversation, I want them to have all the information early, so they don't say to me, oh, send us your management accounts. Have them try and unpick abbreviated accounts. Now, people say to me, oh, David, if your employees see that, they know how profitable the business is. My team see that anyway, because we show them every month. Every month we show them the profitability, we show graphs, we show against target, and we roll up all the dividends and the pensions and the salaries into one line called staff costs. Right? And then we unpick that at the end of the year when we do year end. Because if you look at anybody's accounts, and I was looking at one recently for a small digital agency, we do what we do, not in the same sector, but that's one of our growth strategies. Is small agencies in other sectors. If anybody's watching, please let me know. If you're a small agency doing a niche and stuck at a certain level, let's talk. Is I can unpick their £111,000 net profit, because I'm pretty sure the owner is paying themselves the 10,000 minimum for the NI level, and then they're taking, there's 2 owners, so then they're splitting some of that between them. They're probably, their true net figure is probably more like 30,000.
Yeah.
So if you can put an EBITDA of 5 to 10 on that, whatever you like, it's still worth 0.5% of not very much. No offense to small agencies who look at 100 net and go, that's great. And that's very difficult. It's scaling a business is tough. Scaling a business to 500,000, 1 million, if you know what you're doing, piece of piss. Getting above is very difficult.
So what next for Conscious? You've kind of hinted that you've got some strategies for looking at smaller niche agencies.
Yeah, there's 4 really. The first one is even more focus on operational efficiency. Whatever business you're in, if it's delivering just biddable media and things where you think 10 hours and I can stop, it's never like that. There's a model that I know you know of that I'm very keen on, which is called the Sherlaw's jump model. As you grow a business, you get to this level of turnover and it's fantastically profitable, but then you've got to invest to get to the next level. And some people don't have the skill or the nous to do that. Before I forget, Robert, one thing, if I were you, I'd be the person trying to put together the agency exit valuation benchmark report or something, that you say to people, I'll give you this, but you have to sign a binding contract that if you sell your agency, you give me your number as well. Because
run that past me again. Run that past me again.
You go to the businesses that you know have sold, who will tell you the numbers. You anonymise everything. You say this business was this, with that net, the EBITDA was this, and the valuation was that, and they sold at that. And you put that together. Even if there's 5 or 6 data points, that's more than the industry will have.
Yeah.
And then you ask me to sign a binding contract that says, I'll give you that, but David, if you sell, whatever it is, you have to give me your number. Anyway, so back to the 4 options. One is...
Actually, I'm going to interrupt you on your option. If you just go back one stage. So the Sherlaw's jump model is based on 2 things. So if people want to go back to the roots of it, which are a guy called Ed Greiner in the 60s, and then in the 70s, two people called Churchill and Lewis, who use what's called it's a growth model. And what we've actually done here is we've actually mapped agency growth against the what you want to call it, the jump model or the growth model, about where the pinch points are. So look up Greiner or check it out, because it's absolutely fascinating stuff. So your one thing is operational efficiency. What do the Romans ever do for us?
Because everybody can be more efficient. I mean, and it's looking in detail. There's a great line that I've been using recently. It's from the film The Big Short, which is one of my favorites. It's not just Margot Robbie in the bubble bath, it's just the whole story of the financial crash. But right at the beginning, I think it's Ryan Reynolds says this. He says, if you are wondering how a bunch of misfits and weirdos spotted the biggest opportunity in the financial markets ever, it's because they did what nobody else did. They looked. Right? So if you think, as the owner of an agency, somebody else is looking at the really detailed numbers in your business, I guarantee you they are not looking in the way that you would as an owner. So one of the things that I changed at the end of February, I said, this sounds ridiculous to some of you, right? Every single quote that goes out of the door that's more than £100, I see. Every single quote. When one of the team emails me the quote to look at, the link to Dropbox, in the subject line of the email, it says, David, I need this back by time and date. And if it's the next 20 minutes, they need to phone me, okay? Or in extreme circumstances where I'm doing some podcast for some old guy, there is a fallback plan. Every single quote I saw for the first 2 months, we increased the price. Either we put a bit more project management because the client was a pain in the ass. And Robert, make a note to ask me about our planned 2020 price increase in a second. Or I said, look, I'm sorry, we have never done that in that time. And this came about because earlier this year, we quoted 2 bits of work at 6 hours and took 15 or 18 hours. Now that is almost the Christmas party, that amount of money. So if you've not read about the Big Mac Index, go and read it. We now have the Christmas Party Index. How many Christmas parties could we have if we did that project at a time? So one is operational efficiency. The secondly is more aggressive growth in our existing sector. So we spend 4% of turnover on marketing, right? So we'll spend 100 grand on 2.5 million. We have a full-time head of marketing, a full-time marketing exec, and 1 salesperson, and I do very little selling anymore. That's how you grow consistently at 10 to 15% a year, even in tough markets, is by spending on marketing and executing it properly. When we were turning over £750,000, we were spending £75,000 on marketing. We were spending 10% of turnover. That's how you grow consistently. Most agencies won't do that. The third one is acquisition. So looking for other small agencies in sectors where they're stuck. Either they just don't have the skill, management skill, inclination, or marketing skill in general, or just have got there accidentally and don't know how to do the next jump. And the fourth one is, and I put it fourth because it's looking around some international options.
So for you, it's operational efficiency, it's marketing focus, acquisition, globalization. Yeah. Wow, great. That's really exciting. You said that I should come back to you about 2020 prices.
So I was talking with a client earlier this year. They were just going through the financial year, and she said, any price changes this year? I said, no, because we only change our hourly rate once every 2 years. It's just the paperwork's less, and we do it we went 80, 85, 90, 95, 100. And next year, we're going to change that. So on December the 1st this year, we're writing to all our customers, telling them that from the January the 1st, 2020, our prices are going up. Not just the hourly rate, but every service they buy from us. So if they've been a customer, we've been running their website and providing a low-level account management service, and that's been £400 a month, it will have been that for 10 years. How bonkers does that sound to people watching? So we're going to write to them and say, we're putting the price up by 10%. This is told to me by a customer. So the price increase is 10%. I picked that number, not the customer. The customer suggested the process. Your price will go up. Our prices, are going up from January 1st. However, your price, Mr. Craven, will only go up from the start of your next financial year, which if you're unlucky is January. Most people will be March or April. And if you're really lucky, it'll be November, okay? Because then we can have a conversation with you about when you're getting your next financial plan so you can plan for it. So if I take all of that, let's say by the end of this year, that could be 2 million of our 2.5 to 3 million turnover. And I put all of that at 10%, that's 200,000 straight to the bottom line. Let's assume I lose half of that, I'm still 100 grand better off. And we've probably lost the crap clients who won't pay us enough anyway and don't want the increase. Straight out of the Robert Craven book of how to run your agency.
Thank you. So let's wrap things up. So the first, I'd like one or two tips from you, one liner, one thing that you would, if you just had a long evening with an agency owner who's running a smaller agency and you've been eating and been drinking, you're coming out of the bar, I'm going to ask you what the one thing you'd recommend or the two things you'd recommend to them. But it's been absolutely brilliant talking to you because you've opened up loads. I'm sure loads of agency owners have been scribbling notes and they'll be rewinding and saying, exactly what did he say there? That's really absolutely fascinating because, and one of the delights of having you on the show is, I think what you're doing at Conscious is absolutely awesome. I just love it. So what's your one-liner or your one-liners to agency owners who haven't got to where you are now?
So there's two, because I think there are two audiences. If you're I still want some growth, almost without exception, you're not spending enough money on marketing. I'd love to be challenged on that, but people who are there at the 750 level, they're not spending 10%, nowhere near. So that's the first one. And if you're happy where you are, you're not working 80 hours a week, and you're okay drawing what you're drawing, it's micro focus on operational efficiency and eke out every pound of profit you can, because most people don't do that because it's hard. It's a pain in the ass. Looking at every single piece of work that goes through your business, how long should it have taken? How long did it take? Look at every task under that. How long should it have taken? How long did it take? And then adjust pricing accordingly. And without that, you got no chance of making the right profit.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, David. It has been an absolute delight and an absolute pleasure to interview you, to have you on the show. And I say a really big heartfelt thank you very much.
My pleasure. And you'll publish my contact details if people want to get in touch and want a bit more detail behind that. I'm happy to help.
Everything will be at the end of the podcast. Thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Pleasure. Bye. Have a nice Friday.